Hi there! Before we get started, I just wanted to mark this occasion. This is actually my 100th sci-fi classic review. And for those of you who've been with me and have been supporting me and watching my videos, just thank you. I really appreciate it. This wouldn't be possible without you. And for those of you who are new to the channel, and this is like your first video, welcome! I hope you stick around, I hope you watch some more videos, and I hope you really like it. So that's all, and with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start talking about my 100th sci-fi classic review.
Douglas Quaid dreams of Mars, a mild-mannered construction worker whose wife tries to distract him from thoughts of visiting the Red Planet. Quaid hears about Recall Incorporated, a company that will implant fantastic memories so you can take the vacation of your dreams without ever leaving your comfortable life. Quaid signs up for a head trip to Mars, in which he'll become a secret agent beset by killers and femme fatales who uncovers an ancient alien conspiracy and saves the world. But as the recall procedure gets underway, it reveals another set of memories locked away in his mind, those of a completely different identity, a man named Hauser, whose brain was washed by the evil Cohagen, a dictatorial tycoon of Mars, hell-bent on wiping out the rebellion that threatens his power. As his wife turns against him and assassins close in, Quaid must make a daring escape back to Mars to uncover the truth about his identity and his future. But how can he be sure that what he's experiencing is actually real, and not just the memories Recall had promised to give him?
In the mid-1970s, the writer Ronald Shusett bought the film rights to the Philip K. Dick short story We Can Remember It For You wholesale. After seeing the student film Dark Star by John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon, he got into contact with the latter and expressed an interest in working together to turn the story into a full script. O'Bannon agreed, as long as they also worked on his script, called Memory, which would eventually become 1979's Alien. The Philip K. Dick adaptation, now titled Total Recall, was shopped around to various studios. The studios were impressed with it, but wary of its expensive, effects-heavy nature. Eventually, it was optioned by Dino De Laurentiis, who spent several years getting it into pre-production with various directors, including David Cronenberg, Richard Rush, and Bruce Beresford. The project finally got underway in Australia, with Beresford, an Australian native, in the director's chair. Arnold Schwarzenegger had been interested in the script for years and lobbied with De Laurentiis to play the lead. But De Laurentiis didn't like the idea, as the script called for a more subdued everyman hero who starts the film as an accountant. Meanwhile, after Schwarzenegger saw RoboCop, he had a lunch meeting with its director, Paul Verhoeven, expressing his admiration and desire to work together on a future project. A few months later, news broke that, following a string of financial disappointments, the Dino De Laurentiis Entertainment Group was filing for bankruptcy and canceling all projects currently in early development, including Total Recall. Schwarzenegger immediately contacted Mario Kassar and Andrew Vania from Carolco Pictures, with whom he had just finished Red Heat, and told them to buy the project from De Laurentiis. Within hours, it was theirs, and Schwarzenegger was dialing Paul Verhoeven's number. Verhoeven agreed to direct, with Arnold as the star and Shusett staying on board as a producer, and he brought in Gary Goldman to reconcile the roughly 30 different scripts that had been developed over the years, with input and oversight by Shusett, who still considered the project his baby. Schwarzenegger was of course put in the lead role, which was altered to fit his physique and personality. When the project had been in development with De Laurentiis, several other actors had been considered, including Christopher Reeve, William Hurt, Jeff Bridges, Patrick Swayze, and Richard Dreyfuss. Arnold, however, felt that the contradiction between his strong exterior and the meekness of Douglas Quaid at the start of the film was a better way to go, which I'll talk a little more about later. The two female leads, Quaid's wife/minder Laurie and the love interest Melina, were given to lesser-known actors in order to keep the budget down. Within 2 days of casting, Verhoeven picked Sharon Stone for Laurie and Rachel Ticotin as Melina. Both actresses had been working in the industry for over a decade at this point, but neither was particularly well known. Stone would go on to achieve fame with Verhoeven's Basic Instinct and Martin Scorsese's Casino, while Ticotin would find steady work in other action movies and television series. The primary antagonist, Cohaagen, is played by Ronnie Cox, whose name will probably get this video demonetized. He had previously appeared in a similar role in RoboCop, and for Total Recall, he chose to play his part even more villainously. For his underling, Richter, Verhoeven cast Michael Ironside, who had auditioned for the lead in RoboCop and subsequently turned down the role of Boddicker.
Ooh, guns!
However, Verhoeven liked the actor and brought him in again for Total Recall, though he did make him go through a traditional audition. George, the man secretly hiding the rebel leader in his torso, is played by Marshall Bell, who also voices Kuato.
Open your mind. Open your mind.
Bell had previously worked with Schwarzenegger on Twins, though I'll always think of him as the gym coach from A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Instead of listing the rest of the notable cast like I normally would, I'm just going to show a supercut of actors from Total Recall who also appear in Star Trek, starting with the easy one, Ronnie Cox, who plays Captain Jellicoe.
They're all connected!
Hey man, you need a cab?
Well, what's wrong with this one?
He ain't got 5 kids to feed.
No, I'm sure she hated every minute of it.
But you've got to want to return to reality.
Gary, how was your trip to Mars?
You wanna have some fun?
We hope you enjoyed the ride!
While we're stopped, I just want to quickly remind you to hit that like button, and if you really do like this video, hit that subscribe as well. Your support really makes this channel possible, so please, if you like what I'm doing and you want to see more, consider joining my Patreon to get access to bonus content, vote on future topics, and more. If you want to see even more from me, I'm also the co-host of a couple of different podcasts, the Streaming HEAP and From Here to Paternity, which are available wherever you get your podcasts, and I have a novel called Paradox that is available through Amazon. If all else fails, though, you can always check out my website at emcgill.com, where you'll find written reviews of plenty more sci-fi classics in both film and literature. Now then, with all that shameless self-promotion out of the way, let's move on. Filming on Total Recall began in March of 1989, entirely in and around Mexico City and the famous Estudios Churubusco. Filming in Mexico presented health challenges to the cast and crew, but it also gave the filmmakers many great locations to work with, such as an oppressive-looking military academy and a red mountain that doubled for the outside of the Pyramid Mine on Mars. Production designers consulted with experts at NASA when imagining what the Martian cities would look like, which is where they got the idea to build them along the walls of a canyon, where radiation exposure would be more minimal. Most of the Mars sequences were filmed on sound stages, often with giant blue screens, which made for a unique lighting challenge, given that everything was supposed to have deep red reflections from the Martian exteriors, rather than the contrasting blue glow of a compositing wall. Several miniatures were used for those exteriors, built under the supervision of Eric Brevig and DreamQuest Images. In the script, the Pyramid Mine was supposed to be the infamous face on Mars, but Verhoeven felt it was too hokey, not to mention the fact that he thought the Martian face was an exercise in mass pareidolia. Though the majority of the effects are practical, the X-ray sequences were done with computer graphics that were state-of-the-art at the time. Other practical effects were crafted by the great Rob Bottin, who had worked with Verhoeven before on RoboCop and is perhaps most famous for John Carpenter's The Thing. Bottin created some truly iconic moments in Total Recall, and his Kuato puppet was allegedly so good that several audience members asked how Verhoeven found an actor with a conjoined twin. The entire effects crew, including Bottin, would later get an Academy Award for their efforts. Many of the actors did the majority of their own fight scenes, including Stone and Ticotin, and there were several minor injuries on set. Schwarzenegger, for example, badly sliced his hand open on broken glass in one scene, and broke his finger while fighting in another. The music was composed by the great Jerry Goldsmith, and it's honestly some of his best work. Goldsmith enjoyed working with Verhoeven, and the pair would work together a few more times on Basic Instinct and Hollow Man. The original cut of the film that Verhoeven turned into the MPAA was given an X rating for its excessive violence and gore. This was nothing new for the notoriously violent tastes of the director, and he was forced to make several cuts to the action to tone it down enough for an R. Nevertheless, the film would be knocked by critics for its gruesome brutality, as it had one of the highest on-screen body counts of any movie at the time. Initial marketing was timid, with a forgettable teaser and little penetration to the cultural consciousness. Schwarzenegger demanded a much bigger marketing push during the 3 weeks leading up to the film's release. Given that Total Recall was an expensive production, the final budget was as much as $80 million, and that it had stiff summer competition, going up against the likes of Die Hard 2, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and RoboCop 2. Still, when Total Recall released on June 1st, 1990, it was a smash hit with audiences, taking away a total worldwide gross of over $260 million, making it the second highest grossing film of the summer, behind Patrick Swayze's Ghost. Critics were generally mixed, praising the effects and themes but decrying the violence and action tropes. They couldn't stop the movie from becoming an instant classic, though. It further raised the profile of Arnold Schwarzenegger ahead of the following year's Terminator 2, and it gave Verhoeven even more clout in Hollywood, making him one of the most popular and sought-after directors of the early 90s. A sequel was ordered and a script was written by Shusett and Goldman that was to be a loose adaptation of Philip K. Dick's The Minority Report, something Goldman had been trying to make into a movie for many years. This sequel built upon the psychic precognitive mutants introduced in Total Recall.
Do you want to know the future?
What about the past?
But the script was apparently unwieldy and overly complicated. Then, in an ironic twist, Kuroko Pictures, like the Dino De Laurentiis Entertainment Group before it, filed for bankruptcy and sold the project. The Total Recall aspects would eventually be written out of the script, and the film would wind up being made by Steven Spielberg as 2002's Minority Report. There was also a short-lived television series in 1999 called Total Recall 2070 that had only the barest of connections to the source material, as well as a remake in 2012 starring Colin Farrell and Kate Beckinsale that I know I've watched, but I can remember almost nothing about it. Suffice it to say, it doesn't hold a candle to the original. Because yes, I do love the original Total Recall. Sure, in hindsight, it definitely suffers from the excesses of the early 90s, but if you glance beyond its prurient interests, bloody body count, and cheesy Arnold one-liners,
See you at the party, Richter!
it's one of the most intelligent sci-fi action movies of the 20th century. Don't get me wrong, I love the excesses too, but even though I will probably remember the woman with 3 breasts until my dying day, I believe it is the clever, provocative script that makes the movie so popular and so fondly remembered. For starters, I love the ambiguity of the ending, where it is never made concretely clear whether the movie was taking place in the real universe of the story, or whether it was the malfunctioning memories being implanted in a man about to be lobotomized. This is what the entire plot hinges on, and it gets at a lot of themes that define the works of Philip K. Dick, questions of identity, meaning, and whether there is any practical difference between the reality we perceive and the reality we inhabit.
Do you think this is the real Quaid? It is.
The core theme of the narrative, though, is a pretty universal one, coyly papered over in the trappings of action and science fiction. We define who we are through our actions and our choices, not through the accidents of our biology. Quaid faces many difficult choices in his journey, but they all boil down to who he decides to be. Does he decide to be Hauser, the selfish alter ego who could live a decadent life of vice? Or does he decide to be Quaid, the unlikely hero who faces impossible odds and could potentially save an entire planet? Does he decide to accept that his reality might be completely broken and that he has a chance to return to the normal life he had before? Or does he convince himself to embrace what might very well be a terminal delusion? I think you can take it even further, too. This is a movie about the suture effect, the thing that happens between characters and audiences when suspension of disbelief is suitably maintained. That suture between us and the hero is a kind of willing delusion, an unspoken agreement to replace our own ego with the fantasy presented to us. Like Quaid, we don't want to be reminded of who we are outside of the fantasy, and we can easily make ourselves believe that the reality being shown to us in a story is true, no matter who we happen to be. This gets back to why I think Schwarzenegger was right to highlight the difference between Quaid's physical strength and his mental weakness at the start of the story. No matter how meek and subservient we might be in the real world, we'd love to have the body of Arnold Schwarzenegger and the mind of a planet-saving super spy, even if only for a couple of hours. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. Do you prefer to believe it was all real, or do you think it was all in Quaid's mind? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and until next time when a classic horror icon will undergo changes in both gender and tone, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love, as long as you're not hurting anybody.
We're married.
Consider that a divorce.